The night a billionaire leaned close and whispered, "Stop pretending," in my ear. I knew that summer had taken my life apart and put it back together in a way I could never walk away from. But that night only happened because of a phone call I almost ignored. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Nathan Cole. I am a 34-year-old carpenter, a widowed father, and the kind of man who likes simple things. Wood that is straight, jobs that are clear, bills that are paid on time. My life had become small on purpose. I woke up, made breakfast for my 7-year-old son, Charlie, worked on whatever project I had that week, picked him up, did homework, dinner, dishes, and bedtime. Then I sat at the kitchen table and did estimates while the lake outside our window went dark. It was not exciting, but it was safe. I told myself that was enough. So when my phone lit up at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning with an unknown number, I had no idea I was about to meet the woman who would destroy that safety and give me something better. This is the story of a single dad who thought his life was supposed to stay small, and a billionaire who had forgotten how to be a real person. It is about money and secrets, about grief and second chances, and about one summer that changed everything. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and tell me your city in the comments. I want to see how far this journey travels. Now, back to that phone call. Charlie was at the kitchen table, feet swinging, turning his scrambled eggs into some kind of maze. Morning light came in through the window over the sink and hit the lake behind our house, turning it gold. It was my favorite time of day. Just me, my kid, and the sound of the pan cooling on the stove. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. Local area code. I almost let it go. Unexpected calls had brought nothing but bad news since the night a police officer knocked on my door and told me a drunk driver had taken my wife's life at an intersection she drove through every day. Since then, I liked things I could plan. Calls I expected. But bills do not care about your memories. I wiped my hands on a towel and picked up. Hello? Mr. Cole? The voice was female, clear and calm. There was a kind of sharp control in it that made me stand up a little straighter. My name is Isabel Vaughn. I was given your number by Tom at the hardware store. He said you handle carpentry and home repair. Is that right? That's right, I said. What do you need done? Quote. She paused, just for a breath, but I heard it. I recently purchased the old Harper place on the North Shore, she said. The deck is unsafe. The roof has damage. There are some structural issues. Tom said I should call you. He also said you are discreet. The Harper place. Even if you have never lived in a small town, you know the kind of house I am talking about. Big, old, expensive once, then empty for too long. Kids dared each other to sneak up to the front porch at night. Old folks told stories about parties from 30 years ago. I had driven past that house my whole life. I had never been inside. When would you like me to take a look? I asked. Today, she said. There it was again in her voice. Not panic, not quite. More like someone who had lived her whole life in control and did not like feeling it slip. I can pay your normal rate plus a premium for short notice. And Mr. Cole, she added, I value my privacy. I would prefer that my situation not become town gossip. Tom said, you mind your own business. Is that accurate? I looked at Charlie. He had his fork in the air like a rocket and was making sound effects under his breath. His backpack waited by the door. His school fees were due next week. My truck needed new tires. I do good work, I said slowly, and I do not talk about my clients. That is all I can promise. That is all I need, she said. Can you be here at 10? I can. She gave me the address I already knew, thanked me, and ended the call before I could say anything else. I stood there in the kitchen for a long second, phone still in my hand, watching sunlight move across the water. New job, Dad? Charlie asked. Maybe, buddy, I said. We'll see. Quote, what I did not know, what I could not have known, was that the woman on the phone had been awake all night, that she had made a list of local contractors and crossed each name off after saying no, no, no until she reached mine, that she was not just hiding from noise or stress or a hard month, she was hiding from a whole world. I dropped Charlie at my mother-in-law's house. like I always did on long job days. Linda kissed his hair and gave me one of those looks only mothers can give. Half worry, half gentle push. "Tom says the Harper place has a new owner," she said as Charlie ran to the backyard. "Some rich woman from the city. Probably trouble." "Work is work," I answered, too sharp. Linda raised her eyebrows but let it go. "Just be careful," she said. "People do not buy houses in towns where they know no one unless they are running from something." I drove to the North Shore with that sentence echoing in my head. The Harper place rose up from the trees as I turned into the long driveway. It was 3 stories of weathered wood and glass, sitting above the lake like it was watching everything. Someone had already cleaned up the yard. Fresh gravel on the drive. New plants. But the gutters were sagging, and the deck boards looked gray and tired. It was the kind of place that once said old money and now said unfinished business. I grabbed my tool bag, my measuring tape, my notepad. I was ready for rotten beams, warped boards, hidden water damage. That was the kind of problem I understood. What I was not ready for was the woman who opened the door before I could knock. She looked nothing like the owners I was used to. No yoga pants and messy bun. No old flannel shirt and garden gloves. She wore jeans and a white shirt that probably cost more than my whole outfit. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple tie. No heavy jewelry, no obvious makeup, but everything about her said money. Not loud money, not new money, the quiet kind that had never needed to explain itself. "Mr. Cole," she said, "thank you for coming." "Just Nathan is fine," I said. "You must be Ms. Vaughn." Quote, "Isabel," she said, "please come in." The house smelled like fresh paint and dust. Some rooms were finished, others were bare down to the studs. The lake showed through huge windows at the back, gray and restless under a sky that promised rain. "You have had crews in here," I said. "For a month," she answered. "They finished their contract and left. I prefer fewer people around." There was a weight on those words. I did not ask what it was. The deck at the back was even worse up close. Boards soft under my boots, posts dark with rot. I knelt, pressed my fingers into the wood and felt it give. "This needs a full rebuild," I said, standing. "Not just new boards, new posts, new joists. We need to check where it meets the house, make sure the damage has not spread into the foundation. You are looking at 3 weeks, maybe 4, depending on weather." "How soon can you start?" she asked. "I can have an estimate for you tomorrow," I said, pulling out my notepad. "Materials, labor, timeline. I do not work without a written estimate. It protects both of us." Quote. For a second she looked surprised, like she was used to people bending around her. Then something like respect flickered in her eyes. "Tomorrow is fine," she said. "Just email it. If I approve, you start Monday." "Works for me." She turned toward the lake, arms folded tight over her chest. I could see tension in her shoulders, like she was made of glass and force at the same time. "Can I ask something?" she said, still looking at the water. "Sure," I answered. "Why are you still here?" I frowned. "Here at the house?" "No," she said. "Here in this town. Men like you leave. They go to cities. They build bigger things. Why did you stay?" Quote. For a moment, I thought about giving her the easy answer, the one I gave strangers, the lake, my clients, my mother-in-law. Instead, I heard myself say, "Because my wife is buried here. Because my son needs stability. Because running from grief doesn't make it smaller. It just changes the view." She finally turned to look at me, and there was a sharp pain in her eyes that told me I had just stepped onto ground I did not understand. "Interesting," she said quietly. "Most men pretend they stayed because they love small-town life." "I am not most men," I said. "I can see that," she answered. For a second, neither of us moved. The lake wind came through the open doorway, bringing the smell of rain. I had the strange feeling that something had shifted. Like a line had been drawn, and I had already crossed it. I thought this was just another job. I did not know that the woman in front of me was not simply new money in town, but one of the most watched billionaires in the country. I did not know that every news site in the city had her name in their headlines. I did not know that by the end of that summer she would lean close in a storm and whisper 2 words that would tear down the walls I had built around my heart. If you're still here, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Would you have taken that job if you were me? Or let the rich stranger fix her own deck? Because that same night, sitting at my tiny kitchen table with a pencil behind my ear and a calculator older than half the kids at Charlie's school, I realized this was not just fix some boards and go home money. It could cover new tires, school fees, and the kind of groceries that don't come in bulk discount bags. Charlie was on the living room floor, building a spaceship out of Legos that looked one earthquake away from collapse but somehow stayed together. Every now and then he'd bring a piece to me like it was a joint project. "Dad, can this be the engine?" Quote, "Sure, buddy, as long as it doesn't explode on landing." He'd grin and run back to his pile. I spread out my notes. Lumber costs from Tom's store. Hardware, stain. 3 to 4 weeks of labor if the weather behaved, which it never did. I wrote it all down anyway. Numbers were easier than feelings. At 7:30, right on schedule, my mother-in-law called. "How was he today?" I asked, phone wedged between my shoulder and ear while I double-checked the math. "Perfect, like always," Linda said. "We made cookies, and he beat me at Go Fish twice. And before you ask, no, I didn't let him win." I smiled despite the weight in my chest. "Thanks for taking him. I got a new job today. Harper Place." There was a pause. "The big house on the North Shore?" Her tone shifted straight to small-town radar. "So that's true. Tom's wife said some investor woman bought it. From the city. Paid cash." "So everyone knows already," I said. "Nathan, this is Willow Bay. People know when you sneeze at the grocery store." She hesitated then. "Just be careful, honey. People who run to small towns with that much money, they're usually running from something worse than a leaky roof." I looked over at Charlie, now making rocket noises and zooming his ship through the air. "I'm just there to fix what's broken," I said. "That's all." After we hung up, I finished the estimate, checked it twice, and stared at the email address on the scrap of paper she'd given me. Isabel Vaughn at the kind of address that doesn't belong to just anyone. I hit send. I told myself it was just work. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "This is perfect. Start Monday. IV. No haggling. No. Can you shave this down? No. My nephew can do it cheaper." Just perfect. If you've ever lived invoice to invoice, you know how suspicious that feels. I should have wondered more. I didn't. I just went to bed, listening to the lake, pretending this was normal. Monday morning, I pulled into the Harper driveway at 6:58 a.m. The lake wore that early light skin, soft, silver, still waking up. Mist hung low over the water. My boots crunched on gravel as I unloaded tools, the familiar sounds and motions grounding me. Nobody met me at the door this time. No billionaire at 10 a.m. sharp. Just a big, quiet house and the creak of old wood as I walked through to the back. I started with what I know best: demolition. There's something honest about tearing out rotten boards. No secrets, no pretending. You pull, the wood gives, and the truth is right there in front of you. An hour in, my shirt was damp. My arms were dusted with gray, and the old deck looked like a missing tooth. The lake breeze came through the gap, carrying the smell of water and pine. Around 8:30, the door slid open. "You start early," Isabel said. I looked up. She stood in the doorway with a glass of water in one hand and a mug of coffee in the other. Gone was the crisp, untouchable version of her from our first meeting. She was still in jeans and a simple shirt, but her hair was loose, and she had the kind of shadows under her eyes that come from arguing with your own thoughts all night. "Only way to beat the heat," I said, standing and wiping my hands on my jeans. "Or the rain, or the next surprise the house has for us." She stepped out, handing me the water first. "I thought you might need this." "Thanks." I drank half of it in one go. The lake glared sun at us, already bright. "How long have you been here?" 6 weeks, she said. Most of that with construction crews hammering from sunrise to sunset. The silence is new. "Good new or bad new?" I asked. She looked out over the water. "Different," she said. "I'm still deciding." I went back to pulling boards. She watched for a while, leaning against the doorframe, fingers wrapped around her coffee mug like it was something more important than caffeine. "How bad is it?" she asked. "About what I expected," I said. "Good news. The connection to the house is solid. Whoever built this knew what they were doing. Bad news. The posts are done and most of the joists are compromised." I pried up another board and held it in my hand. The wood crumbled under my thumb. "Water's patient," I said. "You give it enough time, it finds every weakness." She was quiet for a second. "That sounds like a metaphor," she said. I huffed a laugh. "Didn't mean it that way." "It fits anyway," she murmured. We worked like that for a while, me tearing down, her standing there with her coffee, staring at the lake like it was either going to save her or swallow her whole. "Tom mentioned you're raising your son alone," she said finally. "Is his mother?" "Dead," I said, because there's no kind or polite version of that word. 3 years ago, drunk driver, downtown. Charlie was 2. The wind tugged at her hair. She didn't look at me. She looked at the water. "I'm sorry," she said. "That must have been devastating." I finished for her. "Yeah, it was. Still is. Some days more than others." I straightened up, leaning on my pry bar. "You learn to build around it," I added, "like structural damage. You don't always get to fix the crack. You just make sure the whole thing doesn't come down." She turned then, really looking at me. There was something like recognition in her eyes. Not the pity you get from people who've never lost anything, but the look of someone who carries their own ghost. "Is that what you're doing?" she asked. "Building around it?" Quote. I shrugged. "I'm doing what my son needs me to do. Some days that's enough. Some days I pretend it is." She took a breath like she was about to say something else, then stopped. "I'll let you work," she said instead. "Thank you for answering." She went back inside, and I went back to the comforting language of nails and wood and measurable progress. But her questions stayed with me, stuck under my ribs. If you fast forward through a week of work, it looked like this. I arrived at 7. She never came out before 8:30. I tore down the old deck, set new posts, measured, cut, and fitted beams. She appeared with water or coffee, asked about the work, then either lingered or retreated depending on whatever invisible fight she was having with herself that day. We didn't talk much. Not really. Just little pieces. Her watching me from the doorway like the sound of a saw was a kind of medication, me pretending I did not notice. By Friday, the old deck was completely gone, replaced by fresh posts and new bones. Sawdust clung to my boots and the air smelled like cut lumber and sweat. When I started packing up, she stepped out with something different. Beer. I wasn't sure if this was appropriate, she said, holding out one bottle. The label told me it was expensive. But where I come from, people say thank you with things that cost too much. I'm trying to unlearn that. I thought this might be a good place to start. "One beer seems safe," I said. We sat on the dock, the one structure I hadn't touched yet, with our feet hanging over the water. The lake was glass. The sky was turning the kind of gold that makes you forget winter exists. "Thank you," she said after a while. "For the deck?" I asked. "For the deck. For the silence. For not asking questions." She stared straight ahead. "You have no idea how rare that is in my life." "You hired me to fix your house," I said. "Not your story." She laughed once, quietly. "In my regular life, people think they're entitled to everything," she said. "My time, my attention, my business, my private life. They call it interest. It feels like invasion." "Sounds exhausting," I said. "It is," she said simply. We sat in silence for a moment, the water lapping softly at the posts I'd just installed. "You know what helped me?" I heard myself say. "After Sarah died, everyone told me I just needed time. Time to heal. Time to get back to normal. My therapist told me that was—" I stopped, looking for a different word. "That was the wrong idea," I said. "There is no back to normal. There's just forward, into whatever's next. The trick isn't waiting until you feel okay. It's learning to build something new while you still feel broken." She looked at me like I'd cracked something open in her that had been welded shut. "That's either very wise," she said, "or very sad." "Probably both," I admitted. She laughed, really laughed. It was the first time I'd heard it. Loud and surprised, like she hadn't expected it either. It changed her whole face, made her look less like a magazine cover and more like a person. "How old is your son now?" she asked. "7, Charlie. He's the reason I get up in the morning, and the reason I'm tired by 8 at night." "What's he like?" I couldn't help it. I smiled. "Curious, opinionated, talks more than any human I've ever met. He makes friends with everyone because he doesn't know yet that some people aren't worth that kind of trust." I paused. "He looks like his mom," I added quietly. "Same eyes, same smile. Sometimes it hurts to see her every day in his face. Mostly it feels like I gotta keep a peace." Quote, she went very still beside me. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You're lucky," she said, "to have that piece of her still alive." The way she said it made something click in my head. "Did you lose someone?" I asked. She stared out at the water for a long beat. "I lost a lot of things," she said. "Some people, some parts of myself. I'm still figuring out which ones I can get back." We let that sit between us, like another person on the dock. "I should go," I said eventually, checking the time. "My son's with his grandmother today, but she likes him back before he turns into a pumpkin." Isabel stood with me. We walked back toward the house. "Same time Monday?" she asked. "Same time," I said. She watched me load my tools. When I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was still there, standing in the gravel, alone, surrounded by a beautiful house, a huge lake, and the kind of quiet that gets inside your head if you let it. I told myself her life was none of my business. I told myself I was just the guy fixing her deck. I really believed that for about 2 more days, because Monday brought rain, and rain brought all the cracks to the surface. The rain showed up like it had a personal grudge. Not the gentle, movie-style drizzle. I'm talking solid gray sky, steady sheets, the kind of downpour that turns job sites into mud and lumber into warped regret. By 9 a.m., I'd strung a blue tarp from the eaves to a couple of sawhorses, trying to create a dry-ish triangle over my tools. It worked about as well as you'd expect. I was soaked from the elbows down. My hat was losing the battle. Every time I bent to measure, cold water found its way down the back of my neck. I had just told myself this is fine. It's character building when the back door opened. "Is this normal?" Isabel asked, raising her voice over the rain. I straightened up. She was in a soft sweater and jeans, barefoot, holding a thermos and looking at the tarp situation like it personally offended her net worth. "For me, yeah," I said. "For the deck, not ideal." She hesitated then. "Do you want to work inside today?" she asked. "I have a covered porch on the east side. Or, well, it used to be a porch. It's more like a glass room now." I knew what she was offering wasn't just shelter. Outside was her contractor zone. Inside was personal. "If you're okay with that," I said, "I can keep the mess under control." "I don't care about the mess," she said. "I care about you not getting pneumonia halfway through rebuilding my house." She led me through the kitchen, down a short hallway, and into what she called a porch and I would have called a magazine spread. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides. A couple of deep chairs, plants somehow still alive. A small table with a stack of books and a folded blanket. It smelled like rain and coffee and faint lavender. "You can set up here," she said. "The garage door is right there if you need to haul things in. I'll stay out of the way." "Doubt it," I said, then realized how that sounded. "I mean, you don't have to. It's your house." She smiled, quick and fleeting. "Don't worry, Mr. Cole. I won't hover much." Quote, I set up my sawhorses and cut station near one corner, laid a drop cloth, lined up boards and hardware. Years of working in people's homes had taught me how to make as little footprint as possible. Isabel settled on the far end with her laptop, headphones around her neck, a blanket over her legs like she was bracing for a long flight. For a while, it was just the sound of rain on the roof, the rhythm of the saw, and the occasional click of her keyboard. We existed parallel. No pressure, no big talk, just 2 people sharing a room in a storm. And then my phone rang. "School number," Every parent knows that spike in your chest when you see it. Sorry, I said, already walking toward the hallway. I need to take this. Of course, she said, and for the first time since I'd met her, there was no distance in her voice at all, just concern. Hello? Mr. Cole? It's Nurse Janet from Willow Bay Elementary. Charlie's okay, she said quickly, because she knows how parents think, but he's running a fever and complaining of a sore throat. We need someone to pick him up. Fever, sore throat, in my head. Lost work hours, lost daylight, lost progress, lost money. Out loud, I'll be there in 15 minutes. I hung up, shoved my phone in my pocket, and turned back toward the porch. Isabel had taken off her headphones. She was watching me with that too accurate gaze again. Everything all right? She asked. My son's sick, I said, already grabbing tools, my brain shifting gears. Fever at school, I need to go pick him up. I'm sorry, she said. Is it serious? Probably just a bug. Kids collect those like trading cards. I started disconnecting cords. I'll be back tomorrow if he's okay. If not, maybe Wednesday. I'm sorry for the delay. I know you wanted. Nathan, she said sharply. I froze. This is not something you apologize for, she said. Your son is sick. You go. The deck can wait. I know, but the timeline. The timeline, she cut in, is a piece of paper you made. Your kid is a human being. There is no competition here. Quote, I opened my mouth to argue. Years of scraping by had wired me to quantify everything in hours and invoice lines. But she shook her head. Stop pretending, she said quietly. Stop pretending I'm your priority when we both know he is. Go. There was something about that. Her saying it out loud, like it was obvious instead of an inconvenience, that hit harder than any lecture ever had. Thank you, I said. Text me, she said, just to let me know he's okay. You want me to text you about my kid? I didn't say that, but it must have shown on my face. If you want to, she added quickly. I'd just like to know. I nodded and left. The drive to school took 12 minutes. I hit every red light. My hands were damp on the steering wheel, and not from the rain. Charlie sat in the nurse's office, cheeks flushed, eyes glassy, legs swinging off the cot. His backpack was already at his feet. Hey, buddy, I said softly. Heard you're not feeling so hot. My throat's mad at me, he croaked, and my head feels like a balloon. Good thing. I'm an expert in mad throats, I said. We'll get you home, get you some medicine, Netflix, soup, the works. He leaned into me on the way to the truck, smaller and heavier at the same time. It hit me how fast 7 years had gone. By the time I had him on the couch with a blanket, a cartoon, and a dose of kid-friendly painkiller, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. New York area code. For half a second I thought, reporter, then remembered only one person in my life screamed, New York, that loudly. How is he? IV fever 101. Grumpy, watching cartoons, Dr. Dad on duty, Mandavis in C. There was a pause, then, take tomorrow too, just in case. We're not on a countdown, not anymore. IV. That means more than you know. NC. Get some rest, Nathan. IV. I stared at the screen longer than made sense for 3 short messages. You have to understand something. In 3 years of juggling jobs and childcare, every client had said some version of family first. But they rarely meant my family. They meant as long as it doesn't inconvenience me too much. This was the first time someone had told me, without calculation in their voice, the deck can damn well wait. I tucked my phone away, sat next to my sleeping kid, and for the first time in a long time, let myself breathe without feeling like I was losing ground. Charlie bounced back fast. Kids do. By Wednesday, his fever was gone, his throat was down to minor complaints, and he was arguing why being a little sick, not that sick, meant staying home an extra day to finish his Lego space station. Nope, I said, packing his lunch. You're going back tomorrow. I need to go make sure Ms. Vaughn's deck hasn't floated away. Is that the Lakehouse lady? He asked, eyes bright. Can I come see it someday? We'll see, I said, which is parent code for I have no idea how to explain that yet. When I pulled into the Harper driveway Thursday morning, the sky had cleared, but the ground remembered. The earth was soft. The air was that after-rain clean that makes everything look outlined. Isabel was waiting on the back porch with 2 mugs. "How's Charlie?" she asked before anything else. "Back to normal. Arguing with cartoons and gravity," I said. "Thanks for letting me take the extra day." "I didn't let you," she said. "You weren't asking permission. You were being a parent." Then she added, "But you're welcome," like she was still practicing the language of mutual consideration. We walked out to the skeleton of the new deck. The posts stood solid, their bases still dark from the rain. Puddles pooled in low spots. "The storm gave it a good test," I said, running my hand along a beam. "Still solid." "I kept coming out here," she admitted, listening. It was creaking. I was convinced the whole thing would rip away. "Old wood creaks. New wood just complains," I said. "You mostly heard the house breathing." She huffed a small laugh. "Is that what you're doing?" she asked. "Breathing? Or still holding your breath?" I glanced at her. I think that's my line to ask. She took a sip of coffee. "My father died at his desk," she said abruptly. Rainwater dripped somewhere under the deck. A bird called from the trees. My brain tripped over the change of subject. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Massive heart attack," she continued. "He was on a call about a merger. We argued that morning. I told him he was a tyrant who only cared about deals and numbers, not people." She stared past me, eyes locked on the lake. I went to bed that night thinking I'd apologize in the morning. There was no morning. I set my mug down. I didn't move closer. I didn't step away. I just stayed. "What did you do?" I asked. "What I'd been trained to do," she said. "I took over." The words were flat. Practiced. I was 23. The board didn't believe in me, so I made them. I took the company national. Tripled its size. Made deals that got us on the front page of every business paper that mattered. "That's a lot on anyone's shoulders," I said. "It was easier than sitting still," she said. "Easier than feeling." She finally looked at me. "Do you ever regret staying?" she asked. "In Willow Bay. Raising your son here. You could have gone anywhere after the accident." "I almost did," I said. "Had a whole plan. Sell the house. Move to Seattle or Portland. Start over somewhere no one looked at me like I was that guy whose wife died." "Why didn't you?" she asked. "Because leaving wouldn't bring her back," I said. "It would just give me new streets to drive, thinking about the same grief." I shrugged. "And Charlie needed his grandmother, needed familiar faces. This town knew how to show up with casseroles and bad jokes and help." I leaned against a post. "Do I regret staying?" I repeated. "Some days. The days I wonder if I've shortchanged him on opportunity. But then I watch him on the dock, making friends with dragonflies, and I think there are worse things than a small life that fits." She absorbed that. "My whole life has been the opposite," she said. "Big, loud, always performing for an audience I didn't choose. I thought coming here, buying a house where no one knew me, would feel like freedom." "And?" I asked. "And some days it does," she said. "Some days it feels like exile." We let that hang between us. Rainwater dripped off the gutter in a steady rhythm. Somewhere inside, a clock chimed the hour. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Apparently that's all we do," she said, a faint smile on her mouth. "Go ahead." "Why here?" I asked. "You said you had no connection to Willow Bay. People with money like yours usually go for places with better shopping." She considered. "I wanted somewhere that wasn't on anyone's radar," she said. "No paparazzi, no business journalists, no ex-husband's friends, just a lake, a town, and people who'd only know me if I let them." "Is it working?" I asked. She thought about that. "Some days," she said, "you help." "Me?" I said, genuinely surprised. "You show up," she said simply. "You do what you say you'll do. You talk like a person, not like someone trying to extract something. You let me bring you water without acting like I owe you a favor for it." She paused, then added, "You make me feel normal." That word hung heavier than I expected. Normal. Widowed single dad. 1 truck, 1 kid, 0 savings normal. Billionaire runaway. Boardroom legend. Tabloid ghost normal. Maybe normal was just another word for seen. Careful, I said, forcing a half smile. If you keep saying things like that, people will think we're friends. She looked at me for a long beat. Aren't we? She asked. I opened my mouth to deflect, to tuck us back into client and contractor. But the truth was standing right there between the posts with us. Yeah, I said. I guess we are. She nodded, like I'd passed some test I hadn't known I was taking. Good, she said, because what I'm about to tell you, I don't tell non-friends. And just like that, the job stopped being about wood and nails. It became about storms, the ones on the lake, and the ones you can't see on a weather radar. That night, after I dropped Charlie at Linda's for a sleepover and came home to my too-quiet house, my phone buzzed again. Did the deck pass inspection? Dash. IV solid. She creaks, but she'll hold. NC. Good. Also, I made a decision today. I'm going to tell you the truth. About why I'm here. Not tonight. Soon. Just be ready. As IV. I'm just the guy fixing your deck, remember? NC. Stop pretending. IV. Okay. NC. I sat there at my kitchen table, the lake dark beyond the window, my son's drawings crooked on the fridge, thinking about a billionaire telling a carpenter to stop pretending. I didn't know it yet, but that sentence, stop pretending, was the thread that would pull my whole life inside out. Because, money or not, city or small town, grief or guilt, we were both doing the same thing. Holding our breath, building around cracks, calling it survival. And that summer? That summer was about to teach us both that refusing to break is not the same as being whole. The first real storm hit on a Thursday. Not just rain and wind like before. This one came with warnings on the radio, words like severe cell and strong gust fronts and expect outages. Charlie was at my mom's for the night. Pizza, board games, the kind of sleepover he lived for. I'd planned it that way because the forecast looked ugly and the deck still needed hurricane ties on the lake-facing side. You don't have to come today, Isabel had texted that morning. They're saying it's going to be bad. That's why I should come. Want your deck attached when the wind tests her. NC. She didn't argue after that. By late afternoon, the sky looked bruised. Dark purple clouds rolled over the lake, flattening the light. The wind picked up, slapping the water into white caps and rattling the newly installed railings. I worked faster. Nathan, that doesn't look safe. Isabel called from the doorway, hugging her arms around herself. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. Oversized sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder. She looked less like a magazine cover and more like a person who actually lived in this house. That's because it isn't, I said, checking the last bracket. Give me 10 minutes and I'll come in. That's what you said 15 minutes ago, she said. Now I mean it, I replied. Thunder rolled in the distance, low and long, like a truck dragging metal down the highway. The wind surged, pushed at my back hard enough to make me widen my stance. Okay, I said. Time's up. Going in. Quote, I gathered my tools and jogged to the house, just as the first heavy drops slapped the deck. Isabel stepped aside, holding the door open like she might physically drag me through if I didn't move fast enough. The moment the door closed, the sky opened. Rain hammered the glass so hard it sounded like static. The trees bent, leaves turning their pale undersides to the wind. Wow, I said, setting my toolbox down on the kitchen tile. She's a show-off. The lake terrifies me when it's like this, Isabel said quietly. I know it's just weather, but still. You grew up in the city, I said. Out here, storms are just how nature reminds you who's in charge. Comforting, she muttered, but there was the ghost of a smile. The lights flickered once, twice. Then everything went black. The hum of the fridge died. The heating system went quiet. The only sound left was the rain and the wind and Isabel's sharp inhale. Okay, I said into the darkness. That's not ideal. I have flashlights, she said quickly, but her voice had jumped an octave. And backup batteries. And candles. And there's a generator, but I never. Hey, I said, Breathe." "I am breathing," she snapped. "Try slower," I said. "In through your nose, out through your mouth, like you're about to fire someone, not pass out." In the dim light leaking in from the storm outside, I could just make out her outline. She was standing very still, fists clenched at her sides. "Where are the candles?" I asked. "Porch cabinet," she said. "Top shelf." "Stay there," I said. "I'll get them." I moved slowly, hands out, familiarizing myself with her kitchen layout by memory. Counter, island, chair, wall, doorway. The glass room was darker still, the storm cutting what little light there'd been. I fumbled in the cabinet until my fingers closed around the smooth sides of candles and the cold metal of a lighter. A small flame flared to life, throwing jittery gold shadows across the room. I carried 2 candles back to the kitchen, setting them on the counter. The light softened the edges of everything, turned stainless steel and granite into something warmer. Isabel stood where I'd left her, back against the fridge, eyes too wide. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm fine," she lied. "Try again," I said gently. She swallowed. "I hate storms," she said. "I hate sudden dark. It feels like losing control. I don't." Her voice trailed off, and she looked angry at herself for even admitting that much. "I get it," I said. "Hospitals mess me up the same way." She looked at me. Even in the candlelight, I could see the question. "I spent too many nights in one," I said, "after Lauren's accident. Now every time I smell that disinfectant, my skin tries to crawl off my body." I picked up a candle and nodded toward the porch. "Come on," I said. "Let's sit where we can at least see the storm that's scaring us." She hesitated, then followed. We set the candles on the small table between the 2 chairs. The lake was a dark, moving mass beyond the glass. The sky, flashing, occasionally with heat lightning. The wind hit the house in strong, uneven gusts, rattling the windows in their frames. "Is it safe?" she asked, barely loud enough to hear. "If it wasn't, I'd put you in the bathtub with a mattress over your head," I said. "We're good." She let out a breath that might have been a laugh. We sat. For a while, it was just the sound of the storm and the flicker of candlelight, and our breathing trying to find a rhythm that didn't sound like panic. "You said you were going to tell me the truth," I said eventually. She stared straight ahead. "I was going to tell you in daylight," she said, "with coffee and an exit route." "I can go," I said quietly, "if you want." "No," she said too quickly. "I don't want you to go." My heart did an unhelpful little jump at that. She pressed her fingers together like she was bracing herself. "You know the headlines," she said. "Billionaire heiress, corporate shark, ice queen, whatever they decided to call me that day." "I don't read the business section," I said. "I mostly know you as the woman who hates being brought water." One corner of her mouth twitched. "I didn't just leave New York because I was tired," she said. "I left because they were going to use me to bury something ugly." "They being?" I asked. "The board. The executives my father trusted, my ex-husband," she said. "The last part came out like broken glass. There was an acquisition, a smaller company with a drug in stage 3 trials. On paper it was promising. In reality—" She swallowed. "In reality, the data was skewed. Side effects minimized. They pushed to move forward anyway because the stock bump would cover some very bad decisions they'd made elsewhere." "Did you know?" I asked. "I found out," she said. "I had 2 options. Help them spin it or blow it up." "You blew it up," I said. "I leaked internal reports," she said, "to regulators, to journalists. I went nuclear." The wind screamed around the corner of the house, making the glass flecks almost imperceptibly. "They called it betrayal," she said. "Said I'd lost my mind. My ex went on television and talked about my emotional instability after my father's death, how I was lashing out in grief. Quote, I felt my jaw tighten. "So they tried to make you the story instead of the problem," I said. "Exactly," she said softly. "The company went into freefall, investigations, lawsuits, people lost money. A few executives quietly resigned. No one important went to jail. And me? I was suddenly the villain in a story I'd tried to rewrite." She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "I could have stayed," she said, "fought it out. Hired my own PR army, but every room I walked into smelled like my father's cologne and compromise. I couldn't breathe there anymore. "So you came here," I said. "So I came here," she repeated. "To a house that no one had ever taken a picture of. To a town where no one cared how much I was worth, only that I parked straight at the grocery store. And bought a deck that almost killed you," I said, trying to cut the heaviness. She glanced at me, eyes shining in the candlelight. "Almost," she said. Then a guy in a beat-up truck showed up and told me my house wasn't cursed, just badly maintained. "I stand by that assessment," I said. She went quiet again, watching the lightning flicker over the lake. "I keep thinking about something you said," she murmured, "about small lives that fit." "Yeah?" I asked. "My life was never small," she said, "but it never fit either. It was always performing. For shareholders, for the board, for my father's ghost." She turned to me fully. "When you're here," she said, "when you're just fixing things and talking about your kid and making bad jokes about storm safety, it feels like maybe I could have a life that doesn't require an audience." "I don't know how to live any other way," I said honestly. "My audience is usually just a 7-year-old who thinks burps are comedy." That earned a real laugh, short but real. Another gust hit the house. The lights in the main rooms tried to flicker on, failed, and the darkness somehow grew thicker. Without really thinking about it, I reached out, palm up, between us on the table. It wasn't a grand gesture, just an offering. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then her hand slid into mine. Her fingers were cold. Mine were rough, and probably still smelled faintly, like treated lumber. But she held on like I was the only solid thing in the room. "I hate that I'm scared," she whispered. "It feels weak, irrational. I teach Charlie that being scared is just your brain saying, 'Pay attention,'" I said. "What you do after, that's the part that counts." "What do you do?" she asked. "When I'm scared?" "Yeah." I looked at our joined hands. "I used to white-knuckle my way through it," I said. "Pretend I was fine, until something in me cracked. Lately I've been trying something else." "What's that?" she asked. "Letting someone sit with me in the dark," I said, "even if they can't fix it, even if they just hold my hand." Her breath hitched, just a little. "I don't," she swallowed. "I don't have anyone like that. Not really." "You do now," I said before I could overthink it. Silence. Except it didn't feel empty. It felt full, like the moment right before a wave breaks. "Nathan," she said finally. "Yeah?" "This isn't just about the deck anymore," she said, voice barely above the storm. "Is it?" Quote. My pulse jumped. "No," I said. "It's not." Quote. She exhaled, shaky but relieved, like I'd just confirmed something she'd been afraid to name. "We shouldn't," she said quickly. "You work for me. This is messy. Complicated. People get hurt when I let them close." "People get hurt when I let them close too," I said. "Different reasons." Same result. Lightning flashed, and for a second her face was lit up, eyes wide, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before, stripped of all the armor. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered, not without destroying something. "I don't either," I said. "I barely know how to make it through Charlie's homework without crying, but I know how to start." "How?" she asked. "By not pretending," I said. "By not calling it just a deck, or just a job, or just a friendship if it's not." She looked at me like I'd taken the words out of her own mouth. The next thunderclap shook the windows. She flinched. Her hand tightened on mine. "Okay," she said, more to herself than to me. "Okay. No more pretending." She leaned forward, just slightly. So did I. The distance between us closed down to inches. I could feel her breath on my skin, see the way her eyelashes trembled, the tiny scar near her lip I hadn't noticed before. If this were a movie, that's where we'd have kissed. Fade to black. Cue music. In real life, her phone buzzed loudly on the table, making us both jump. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, but her face did. She went pale. "Who is it?" I asked. She stared at the screen like it was a snake. "The board's lawyer," she said. "No one has this number." The storm raged outside. The candles flickered. Our hands were still joined. Whatever we were becoming had just collided with the world she'd tried to leave. And in that moment, holding her hand in the dark while her past tried to claw its way back in, I understood something. This wasn't going to be simple. It wasn't going to be neat. But for the first time since Lauren died, I wasn't looking for simple or neat. I was looking at a woman who terrified and anchored me in equal measure. And I wasn't pretending anymore.